Hi, everybody. My name is Darlene Rondo, Vice President Best Practices for Leonardo's Online Merchandising Group, and I'll be your host for today's special event. We're super excited to present the soon-to-be published Google 2014 Traveler Study. This study covers many travel lines of business, including airlines, vacation packages, car rental, cruise, and lodging. But naturally, today's focus is going to be specifically on hospitality. Welcome to everyone around the globe. I see that we have people from London to Dubai, Hong Kong, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., just to call out a few. And my apologies if I missed your country. So thank you to those of you in the various time zones around the world joining us today. A few housekeeping items before we begin. We're going to be recording today's webinar, and at the conclusion of our session, we'll send you a thank you for joining us email with a link to that recording, which you can share or listen to again at your leisure. Additionally, you have a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel. As we move through our discussion today, please feel free to send in your questions, and we'll address them throughout our webinar as well as at the end of the presentation. I see many of you have already found that questions dialog box, so keep your questions coming in. And we're also going to be tweeting during today's discussion, so please feel free to join in the conversation at #LeoWebinar. And before we start, I'd like to launch a poll to get everyone's opinion on this question that you see on your screen. What is the thing you want to learn most from today's Google study discussion? So there are three answers to choose from. Just click the radial box that applies most. The first answer is understand current hotel shopper behavior. The second answer is how to make an impact during the shopping journey. And then thirdly, what type of content interests hotel shoppers? And interesting results coming in. Right now it's pretty much evenly split among the three different answers. 29% is understanding shopper behavior, 31% the impact during the shopping journey, and it looks like what type of content interests hotel shoppers is winning out at 37%. So at this point, thank you everyone for weighing in, and I'm going to close the poll and we will continue with our webinar. I'd like to introduce our very special guest, Katie Galambos. Katie Galambos works at Google, where she uses data to identify consumer trends for marketers. She partners closely with travel advertisers in the online travel agency space, where she uses research and insights to advise digital marketing strategies across channels, such as search, mobile, display, video, and social media. Katie has a Bachelor of Arts from Yale University. Welcome, Katie. It's great to have you with us today. As we move into our discussion, just a little setup here. Google does the travel and tourism industry a really great service each year when they conduct and release the Traveler Study, and this year is no different. The Google 2014 Traveler Study is about to be published, and we are privileged enough to have an industry analyst from Google here, Katie, to show you why you should care about these results. And this study shows us why multi-screen marketing is important for hotels. In fact, 55% of hotel bookers who use their smartphone for inspiration actually book a different way. And then we're also going to learn about trends in the online travel shopping journey, such as the decline of app usage, which Katie is going to talk more about. And we'll talk about key statistics for understanding consumer behavior. Hotel bookers watch travel videos during the early stages of the shopping journey, and we're going to get some deeper insights into that as we move on. So again, I'd like to reintroduce Katie Galambos from Google, and Katie is going to take it from here. Katie, I'm just going to pass the baton and the mouse over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I'm coming live from somewhat sunny San Francisco, California. And today we're going to talk through some of the results that we gathered from, as was explained, our annual marketing study that we do in partnership with one of our market research third-party partners, Ipsos Media. I'm just trying to get slides to progress, and as they do,
there you go.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. So today, to begin, some of the main takeaways that I hope everyone gets by the end of the discussion today is really how digital is facilitating deeper customer relations, and specifically in two main points. We see a common thread throughout all of our discussions today, really including this ubiquitous effect of the digital world on how hotel bookers are researching, are shopping, are being inspired, and this market effect it's having, new expectations, higher standards by online travelers, and how travelers are interacting with brands. We see digital facilitates an incredibly high level of engagement, two-way conversations, really a new type and opportunity to engage with brands than has ever existed before. And to take care of a bit more housekeeping, just a few more details of how we did collect this data. So we, in collaboration with Ipsos Media, polled 5,000 travelers, 3,500 of which were leisure and 1,500 of which were business. And we get this question a lot. Yes, the business travelers in this study were asked to answer all of the questions specifically around their business travel habits. So that's how we segment the two groups and get a really accurate portrait of both of the groups of leisure hotel travelers. And what we're going to focus on today, we're going to talk through opportunities and inspiration in how these hotel bookers are researching, gathering information, specifically how they're doing that on different devices, and new trends we see exploding in that space. And we're going to end with some new trends that we see in TV and online video. And together, we can take that and think about how all of that can affect our family travel marketing strategies. So let's dive right in, and we'll begin with the inspiration phase. So inspiration is something that we didn't really look at specifically until last year. So this is the second year that we've asked questions about the inspiration phase in our study, and in many ways, it's a very key and first stage in travel that allows marketers to catch the attention of travelers. It's the phase sometimes before travelers have even consciously decided, I'm going on a trip, I need X piece of data. And we realize there's a ton of opportunity that digital marketing can have on travelers in this new phase. So as we've noted in previous years, the majority of travelers turn to digital before they even know how or when they want to travel. We see here that 65% of leisure and 69% of business travelers say that they generally begin researching online before they've made their decisions. That means there's so much opportunity to help influence those decisions. So we again see online sources playing a really important role in these decisions. When we look at the types of sources that inspire leisure travel, we see that friends and family and the internet are equally critical. And this is really interesting to us for two main reasons. First of all, the default assumption in many cases is that friends and family are just far out the most influential, that everyone turns to friends and family for more personalized recommendations before they get online. And we see here that the internet is actually on par with this traditional idea of friends and family recommendations happening offline. It's also interesting because this was the first year that we broke out offline versus online family and friend recommendations, because as we stated in the beginning of this webinar, the prevalence of digital is really transcendent and is moving those kinds of personal recommendations to an online space. So we're now able to explore the difference between those. So specifically, what are we talking about? We see that social and search are key drivers of influence. When we look deeper at these sources from online, we found that social, video, and photo sites, in addition to search engines, are the top channels influencing trip inspiration. And for those of you familiar with Google properties, YouTube and Google Plus are two examples that play a really key role in travel inspiration, with 42% and 17% of leisure travelers noting their influence respectively. Now, as I mentioned, we'll talk more in depth about video in the later sections, but it's really important to include video in this inspirational phase discussion because of the opportunity that lies in the unique advantages that video offers. So when we think of video, we think of sight, sound, motion, these new ways to communicate that aren't offered on other platforms. And it's easy to see why there's so much opportunity in video for the travel and hotel industries. Travel and hotels are sexy products, and these unique advantages naturally align with this visual component of travel. It's an industry that, yes.
Yeah, Mark from the audience has a good question.
Sure.
He said he would have thought that travel videos would be viewed once a traveler is deeper into the shopping journey as opposed to early on. Any thoughts about that?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Great question. And we will actually talk specifically about that later. I suppose a bit of a spoiler alert. Videos actually watch through all of the phases. And we see that, especially when you're deciding where you want to go, we see a lot of people looking at videos from different destinations, for example, to help make those decisions. But we will talk more in depth about that in the video sections later on today.
Great. And Christian has a question as well. Just on the topic of video, are you talking about YouTube only or also Vine and Instagram?
So these questions were asked about video in general. So this can be any type of online video.
Great. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you. So continuing down the path, we are going to begin some discussions about research. So very fundamentally, again, no surprise, the internet is a top source for research. And we look at the same reason that we continue to look at it is not to say, surprise, people are on the internet. I think we all know that. But it's to look at the trending in the year-over-year data. We see continually, this year is the same, offline decreasing while online sources are increasing. And again, because we broke out that friends and family into an online versus online source, we're able to see the strong prevalence of what used to be something only happening offline having a real impact online as well. And of those digital online sources, what are people using? So search, again, is nothing new, but something interesting that we found this year was looking at when people are using search. So travelers are increasingly, and I use that word, I'm stressing it because they're starting with search more often than they used to start with search. And when we look at hotels specifically, outlined here in the yellow box, look at the difference between 2014 and 2013 in the column to the right. We see that people starting with search engines has increased for the hotel industry, and in some cases is stealing share from people starting on brand.com sites, as we see that opposite effect between brand sites versus search engines. So they're using search. What are they searching for? This one particular slide is actually using a Google tool called Google Consumer Survey, so this was not a part of our big online survey. But we wanted to know, what are people typing in? So we first asked, do you use Google to plan your trips? And everyone who said yes, we then asked, what's the first thing you type into Google when planning a trip? We didn't tell them what kind of trip they were going on, so we left the question as vague as possible. And the words you see are verbatim what people typed in. This is not the tool saying, oh, someone typed in Hawaii hotels, someone typed in Dubai hotels. This is consumers directly typing in location, destination, indicating to us that in a bare bones, unquestionable way, we see destination related and generic keywords in many cases starting off that process.
And you know, Katie, just a note on that. You know, we know, right, that guests don't go to the hotel, check in, and lock their door and never leave their room again, right? So they are very interested, and that's why I think this this is so meaningful. They're interested in where the hotel is, what's in and around the space, the location for them to do, because it's an entire experience, right? It's not just about the room.
Oh, I could not agree more. We have a bit more data coming up later about in-destination use of digital and search and devices once people are in their destination, and how the process is really circular. It's not linear, it doesn't end, and there's so much opportunity even after people arrive. Another interesting point about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, one of the things, and I think you addressed this on a slide or two ago, the difference between leisure and business travelers. We are drawing a distinction that we're not really talking about the leisure traveler, right? We are talking about two distinct groups, and the question is from Sarah, why do we see those distinct differences between leisure and business?
Sure, that's a really good question. So one of the main reasons that we typically see slightly different behaviors between the two groups is we see business travelers generally have higher loyalty affinities. They more frequently than leisure travelers know what brands they're going to use. And so perhaps their research phases are a bit shorter and they go more directly to their end booking phase.
Great.
That leads, no problem, and that couldn't be a better segue into the next slide. One quick note before we go. I just want to note that we do see some OTA names in here. We see Travelocity, we see Kayak, and so we see people using search to find more sources of aggregated data. So Sarah's question leads very brilliantly into the next slide. So there are a lot of numbers on this slide, but we left all of the numbers in intentionally because travelers don't have a defined path for keywords. And we wanted to show that here we have all of the phases listed on the left, excuse me, all the types of keywords, and then all of the phases across the top. And the fact that there are numbers and there are quantifiable statistics in all of these phases indicates people are typing in different kinds of keywords across the whole phase. It's an assumption that everyone always starts with generic and always ends on brand. And while that is true in many cases, it doesn't always hold. So we just want to encourage marketers to have a strategy and to be able to capitalize on the types of activities that's not assumed, but that we see here is still happening. So when we talk about hotel bookers, we see they do turn to OTAs and Google to shop around. So we asked, what are the sources used, and this is leisure specific, for hotel shopping. And here we do see that hoteliers do frequently use OTAs. So why are people using online travel agencies? In addition to the pretty typical answers that most people would guess, lots of data in one price, lower prices, we also see quite significantly on this list of reasons brand recognition. It is interesting that we're now seeing this idea of brand recognition also being incorporated into reasons for OTA use, which isn't something that we would have always associated. So we're still continuing the research discussion, but we're going to focus it down a more narrow path, specifically about how there's a huge branding opportunity in the research phase. Simply put, hotel bookers want to recognize a brand that they're booking with. We asked, is it important that they recognize a brand that they're considering booking travel with? 51% and 63% of business travelers said yes. Knowing that, we see here that most travelers, leisure and business, go in undecided when they begin planning. We see on the complete right, I'm totally undecided, and then combined with the middle medium green shade, I'm considering multiple brands. That's a vast majority of both leisure and business travelers don't know. So there's a big opportunity to tell them. So not only are people unsure of the exact brand, this was one of the first times that we looked at this question, but people are also unsure of the differences between brands. Do they know the difference between rental car companies, or in our case, hotel? And while we do indicate here that hotel having the highest percentage of perceived differences, which means people can tell the difference easiest in the lodging category, that's only at 65%. We weren't sure what to expect when these numbers came back, but 65% indicates that there's still a ton of opportunity to distinguish a hotel brand in the hotel space. So what else other than a brand is important in a hotel decision? I'll give you a moment to look through these results as I explain the slide. And on the left, we have leisure results, and on the right, we have business results. So here we just see a couple other options that are very important features when our hotel bookers are choosing lodging. We've highlighted a few on the right among business travelers that we found particularly interesting, such as easy-to-use websites and specific accommodation options available. So while these hotel bookers are doing all this research, they're privy to and they're shown several formats of advertising. But which ones really work? We see that overwhelmingly, advertisements that influence booking were coming from online sources, with search ads being the most effective. And we saw that true for both leisure and business travelers. Our next brief mini discussion will be focused on loyalty. We all know how important and keen to learn more about loyalty everyone is in the hotel space, perhaps more than any other space within the travel industry. We'll see here that travelers are becoming less loyal and are increasingly open to non-traditional accommodations. So setting the stage, hotel bookers do belong to loyalty programs. We see 42% of leisure travelers and 65% of business travelers belong to at least one hotel loyalty program. Interestingly, though, loyalty does not always determine booking. In fact, we see the influence is declining for business travelers who, like we said earlier, are normally the most loyal. Here, when we look at the years displayed, we see the top yellow number, 2014, this year, compared to 2013 and 2012. Those numbers are in response to a question if people who have loyalties plan or are likely to plan their business travel based on those loyalty programs, or if, compared to the prior year, they're less likely to do that. I'm going to spend a moment on this question because the wording is perhaps a bit confusing. But are you less likely? When we see more people being less likely, that means overall the loyalty stickiness, we could say, is not quite as strong this year.
That's an interesting point, Katie. And any thoughts on why that may be?
So based on a couple other results we've seen in the study, we see people being more open-minded, and perhaps it's a result of travelers being more digitally savvy, being more self-sufficient, and with the increase of easily findable and available information, I think consumers are taking things into their own hands and just making sure that they really do have the best deal out there because it's so much more easily accessible now. And again, we do see overall levels of savviness and just people being able to navigate and find things themselves much higher.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Kyle from our audience also makes a good point, suggesting that perhaps, complimentary Wi-Fi access and the other things that are sort of offered across the board to all travelers perhaps has an impact on loyalty. I think that's a good point.
I swear, it sounds like we're plotting these questions because I keep being teed up because our next slide talks exactly about why would someone switch? So travelers would switch programs with better perks and easier paths to rewards. So Kyle, you're right on point. Maybe you should be part of our panel next year. So looking here, there are a few reasons why people would consider switching loyalty programs. And highlighted, we see better perks, and we see faster, easier ways to earn free nights, hotel rooms, or if it's a rental car loyalty program, rental cars, etc. And I'd like to clarify, we've had this question in the past. The top bar with switch for any reason is an aggregate of all of the below answers. It is not saying, oh, I don't care, I would just switch for no reason at all. It's just an aggregate number indicating that the majority of travelers would be influenced by one of the below factors. And again, just to reiterate the point, within the next year, I plan to research or use peer-to-peer sharing alternatives to traditional hotels or car rental services, such as Airbnb or Zipcar. So Kyle and everyone else out there, this could also be another reason why we see potential drops in loyalty programs or willingness to switch, because there are new alternatives that are perhaps offering different kinds or better advantages in the space. All right, getting into some of the meaty topics here. So we just talked about inspiration, research, branding opportunity, and how important a hotel brand is during these phases. So let's continue and sort of switch gears a bit and shift the conversation towards mobile. And again, as a bit of a stage setting discussion piece, we see that smartphones are indeed used throughout the travel process. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the phases, and we see that leisure and business travelers are using their smartphone throughout. I want to call out the statistic highlighted in red, that 67% of travelers use their smartphones at some point in the travel process. So what are people doing while they're using these smartphones during all of these different phases? Here's some examples of the most common types of activities that travelers are using their devices to do in regards to hotel and travel booking. And fundamentally, what I want to call out here is that we see the same types of things happening on both devices. As we know, activities that used to be relegated and only done on a desktop computer, they're all being done in some capacity now on a smartphone as well. So we do want to encourage marketers to make sure that every functionality is offered and is easy to use on all of those devices. So travelers are researching and booking hotels across devices, and this is a hotel-specific look, so we wanted to call this out specifically. We see leisure and business travelers, and we see very high numbers for both research and booking. Again, as is typical, we do see slightly higher numbers among business travelers. We generally see index a bit higher for income and for device ownership. So moving quickly into cross-device. So I think everything we talked about is reiterating points that everyone is fairly familiar with, right? Hotel bookers are using their smartphones. One of the trends here in this section, this cross-device trend that we really want to focus on is, in addition to what we just talked about, which is that travelers are replicating their activities across screens, we also wanted to build on the notion that travelers are moving between devices to conduct or complete the same activity. So I really want to highlight the difference between these 2 points. The first section that we just talked about is saying a traveler might do a given activity on their smartphone, and then a week later, they might do that same activity on their desktop. Two separate activities, just saying that they do them on both. This conversation piece is focused on the idea that to finish one single task, people are using multiple devices and moving between them sequentially. So how are people moving between them? We're really excited to see that travelers rely heavily on their smartphone devices for travel inspiration before planning. We see 70% of leisure travelers use their smartphones for travel inspiration in spare, what we're calling snackable moments, such as commuting, waiting for something, doing quick searches. And over half do so when they're multitasking, things like watching television. And in getting the data back, all of us who are analyzing it, we're thinking to ourselves, yep, I can see myself doing that. I can see myself doing that. And so it's all very realistic and supported by perhaps real life anecdotes in all of our lives. So half of those leisure travelers who are using their smartphone for some sort of inspiration ultimately book another way. In fact, it's a vast majority. We see them moving online and moving around to complete that booking. The implication for marketers here is very, very important. It's critical to know how many travelers who are booking from a different method, because if they start on a smartphone or start on any device and move to another, more than one device are, by definition, being used and influencing the booking decision. And if the focus is only given to that last booking, everything that happened before is essentially ignored, when in many cases, the activities that were done and the information found on the preliminary devices could have huge implications and affect the end booking. We just looked at all of the types of activities done on smartphones and the phases that people are using them. And in many cases, those are the first time your brand is introduced to a consumer, and those are very influential moments. So we want to use this data to really encourage marketers to attribute value and to accurately measure all of the really important activities that happen when an activity is booked a different way than the initial device on which it was found. So what are people switching devices for? We see travelers moving between devices for a variety of activities. Here we're looking at specifically the top 5 activities that leisure travelers do where they start on one device and finish it on another. Again, the trend that we are referring to as sequential device movement. We highlighted pricing specifically because, in distinction from something like looking up map directions or looking for a restaurant, when people are looking up price information, that indicates they're still deciding and they haven't yet booked. They're still very influenceable and their money has not yet been transacted. So people are moving between their devices and there's still opportunity to catch them and make sure that they're booking with you.
That's a really good point, Katie. As hotel marketers look at the clicking behavior and the data available to them, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, thank you. And it's data like this that we find very valuable because it's sort of an industry-wide known question, is all of that, the connecting points between all of them. It's still a bit fuzzy. There's no perfect clickstream model of attribution out there yet. But these points of data help to confirm the theories that we have about moving between devices and help confirm how important and critical it is to be on all the devices and to accurately measure it.
And the other thing I find interesting about it, and I know I have this conversation a lot with folks, is that people don't buy on price alone, right? They buy on value, which is an equation of anticipated experience plus price. So again, to accent what you just said, if you see that someone is still looking at the price, you have a huge opportunity to get their business because it's not a done deal.
Could not agree more. Excellent point. So now we're looking at hotel bookers switching between devices again, and the idea of sequential device usage for travel. So we see that about 70% of leisure travelers are indeed switching between their devices for a hotel-specific planning or booking purpose. And we see the number even higher, highlighted down in yellow on the bottom, for business travelers. So to close off this section, what are they doing? How are they moving between these devices? We see the most common connector between sequential device usage being search. We see here that about 43% of leisure hotel bookers specifically are conducting search on one device and continuing on another device, still searching, still in that same phase. We also see expected results such as saving bookmarks, shopping cart favorites, etc. I just want to confirm that the screen has moved. It has not on my screen, but can everyone see the mobile site versus mobile application side?
That was the last slide. Now we're looking at leisure hotel bookers book mostly via mobile web.
All right, great. I will then. Now okay, my screen has finally caught up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes GoToMeeting has a little bit of a latency.
It's all right. I would have suggested a Google Hangout, but just kidding. So we'll get into the discussion on sites versus apps. So what we're looking about here on this slide are numbers representing of hotel bookers who use their smartphones to book. How did they do so? And again, these numbers can add up to more than 100% because we asked where have you booked? And in many cases, people would have done so more than one time. So it's sort of a select all that apply mathematical deal there. And we've highlighted in red the number for both websites and applications because we really want to communicate that bookings are indeed happening across both. We see less variance among leisure travelers, while we see a higher propensity among business travelers to book through apps, which, like we discussed earlier, we attribute to, in part, their higher loyalty propensity. So they are booking in apps, but why did they download that app in the first place? We're looking here at reasons people downloaded apps, and we see that 1 in 5 are downloading because the mobile website was subpar. This means that they tried using the website first, so the go-to was the website. And in fact, any consumer who then downloaded the app, a brand should feel very lucky that they went through all that trouble. But we want to sort of communicate our focus on the importance of giving the user a great experience. We just created an additional step that the user then has to go through. And the more steps we include before booking, the higher drop-off rates we see. Of course, we do see travelers downloading apps because they have rewards or loyalty memberships with that given brand as well. So even after they download an app, of the people who've downloaded apps, what do they use? Do they use the app more? Do they use the website more? Do they use both? And we see that the majority of travelers are, in some capacity, using both the website and the app, even after they have the app downloaded. The main takeaway here that we want to stress is the importance of maintaining an excellent website experience and not losing focus. It's wonderful to provide apps because, as we saw, hotel bookings are definitely coming through both channels, but we want to maintain strategies in both our website and our app experience. Before I move on, a common question that we frequently get with this type of data is, why would somebody ever use a website experience when they've downloaded the app, when they've already gone through the trouble? This could be for several reasons. First of all, just think of how many apps you probably have on your smartphone. Do you remember that you have all of them? I know I probably have 200 apps, and maybe I used one 2 years ago and have not thought about it since. But another reason could be, as we saw earlier, that travelers are using search to navigate to specific brands sometimes. And it's likely that they would enter through a search result, frequently leading them to a website. Now, in this conversation, we cannot leave without talking about the importance of the digital experience specifically. 84% of leisure hotel bookers have had a poor mobile travel experience. And only 29% of those who've encountered a mobile site that wasn't optimized actually pushed through. That is a very low number of a very high number.
Yeah, Steve in our audience made a comment about how, why do we still find hotels with unresponsive websites? So I'm surprised that 29% is as high as it is. I would have thought, you have a bad experience and, you just move on, right?
I was not in the 29% either.
I know.
I completely agree with you and Steve. So here we're looking at the consequences of those bad experiences. Yes, we do see that some people did connect with a brand in a different way, but you made them do extra work, and that's the opposite of what we want for our hotel bookers. What I want to call out here is that 40% of the time, there was a negative effect for the brand that provided that bad or undesirable experience. And the most common example is that the consumer went to a competitor's website who did offer the functionality in question. That's perhaps the worst nightmare of any hotel marketer. The consumers also complained on social media or told friends and family about the poor experience. So moving on again, continuing with the mobile smartphone discussion piece, I quickly wanted to touch on, as we mentioned earlier and as someone brought up, the question of mobile use in destination. And we bring this up in the conversation of hotels because we do see that hotels are one of the most common subcategories of travel where we see high propensities of in-destination use. So leisure and business travelers frequently call nearby hotels while on their trips. So again, these consumers are on their trip. They, in some cases, might have already made a booking, and they're still using their cell phones. In many cases, smartphones in this case. And when they're using those smartphones to contact hotels while in destination, the leading reason is to inquire about room availability. And this was very, very important to us. In this whole discussion of in-destination, this is perhaps the most important piece that I hope all hotel marketers understand, because we get a lot of questions about, well, what if they're just looking up maps and directions? If they've already booked with me, then I've already collected the money, and how do I know that what they're doing is really something I can provide value for? When we see here that consumers are looking for room availability and booking information, that is indicative of a hotel booker who has not booked and who still has tremendous opportunity. So we want to encourage marketers to value when considering the overall end ROI, to put value behind those inbound calls, because in a lot of cases, there's still a lot of opportunity to close the deal.
So just to clarify, Katie, Mark has a question. So you're not saying that they already have a room reserved and now they're considering and booking somewhere else. You're talking about people who are in destination who haven't yet made a booking?
So I believe this answer could include both. The question was phrased, to see if any sort of in-destination smartphone use was occurring. And this question was really getting at the specifics of what they were looking at.
Got it.
And leisure traveler hotel bookers are also relying very heavily on search engines via their smartphones to find this local information. We see here they're also using apps, clicking on links, but search far out dominates what consumers are using as their go-to source on their smartphone when they're trying to access information while in destination. And a lot of times this is for activities, this is for excursions, but again, they are relying first and foremost on search engines. All right, switching gears here. I now want to make sure we cover TV viewing habits. Travelers are watching in more different ways than ever before, and attention continues to fragment. So, the way that travelers are consuming television is different than it used to be. We see 1 in 3 travelers watch their favorite TV programs outside of live television. Knowing how important television is to the travel and specifically the hotel industry for both advertisers and consumers, we really wanted to dive deeper into this to get a more colored picture about what is going on so we could really explain to ourselves and to our marketers more about this space that I think for a very long time has been a cornerstone of a lot of marketing. Even when travelers are watching TV, a lot of them, 4 in 10, don't even watch the commercials. Of those who do watch live TV, almost half don't watch when they can fast forward specifically. What else are they doing? We see some getting up, leaving the room, doing something else, picking up another device. Critical here in this conversation. That's a whole new opportunity. Their eyes are not on commercials on TV, but the advent of digital has provided this whole new touch point during that same time period. We just saw in the last slide that only 62% of travelers watch live TV. So of that 62, only 58% of travelers who watch live TV watch the commercials. And doing the math behind that, that means, get your pencils out, that only 36%, or barely over a third of travelers, are watching live TV commercials. And again, not surprisingly, when given the option, most travelers do fast forward through the commercials. For those who watch their favorite television programs recorded, we see 78% fast forwarding. I know I am one of those 78 as well.
So am I.
The bottom line here is that when given the opportunity not to watch a TV commercial, most travelers choose not to. And that option is becoming more and more available and common.
And you know, we did an ebook recently on millennials, and when you look at millennials and younger, one of the reasons why they say they don't like to watch commercials is they don't want to be sold to. And I think that's why we're seeing the advent of storytelling become so prevalent, is because it's a much more subtle way to get your message across as opposed to the traditional commercials, and that is in direct response to how people are interacting with commercials.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Again, touching on millennials and what the whole space is going to look like with the advent of, you know, the new and very diverse sort of fragmented consumption habits. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So departing from television, but continuing on the idea of video, in this case, online video being the next frontier. We're seeing travelers engage very heavily with online video and watching more than just travel content. So I think we've covered most of what was in the original poll, and now we will be sure to finish covering and wrapping up the last and pretty popular answer about content. So what kind of content? Video content is a topic that when deciding what kind of content, how you want to push your content, cannot be left out of the conversation. 97% of travelers who watch online video, in fact, did so within the last month. And we included that new in the study this year because we got questions in the past about, well, how do I know these are actually active users, that they didn't just watch a YouTube video 6 months ago and that my marketing material is being seen. These are active users that we're talking about here. So travelers are engaged in YouTube, and we see 3 in 5 leisure and 2/3 of business travelers visiting to purchase passion points. And most of the time, this video viewing activity takes place on YouTube. We looked at why travelers are going to YouTube, and we found that they're going for a number of reasons. Most travelers go to be entertained, but they're also going to explore, like in the title, passion points, hobbies, interests. And the reason that we asked this and why it's important to realize is that people are not always going in search of one specific video. While very high, there are a lot of instances, in fact the majority, where people are going to be entertained. They're very open to the type of content that they see and they're willing to watch. We do see that business travelers have a slightly higher entertainment with online video propensity, which may be a function of more travel, a need for entertainment. And here I'd also like to highlight another question that we get quite often is, how is it beneficial to me to show travel-related content while they're watching videos on an unrelated topic? I wanted to throw the question out now because it usually comes up about here, and I will continue the answer as we move into a few of our other slides. This slide specifically, travelers who watch online video can most commonly be found watching music, TV shows, and movie clips and trailers. Not shown here, the top interest category for affluence is actually news. But this slide here shows so many different types of content that travelers raised their hand and said, yes, I'm watching this other type of content. So back to the question, why is it beneficial to show travel-related content when consumers are watching other things? It goes back to 2 main points that I want to bring up. First of all, tying back to one of our initial discussion pieces, the idea of inspiration. We see so many travelers going online and consuming video when they haven't made decisions, when they're still susceptible to being inspired. Combining the idea of inspiration with everywhere the user is, they're doing all of these things. They're looking at food, they're looking at sports, they're looking at movie clips and trailers. Trying to be everywhere your user is, so across all of these types of content, especially when in many cases they haven't made decisions, they're still in mindsets where marketing can be extremely effective, is why we see an opportunity growing, and we really encourage marketers to expand video strategies and, like one of Google's mantras, really being everywhere that your target user is. Engage in travel-related video activities in the past 6 months. So again, we just want to highlight that this is hotel-specific. We wanted to highlight that hotel-specific travelers are watching travel-related video. And this is different than what we just looked at, which was different types of video, video in general. This is travel-related video. And we see many leisures and a large percentage of business travelers are going and seeking out and watching travel-specific video. All right, so I think I'm finally circling back to one of the answers we had at the beginning of the webinar about when online video is used during the travel process. And yes, highlighted in yellow, perhaps the most intuitive answer is when deciding, when in that actual decision, consciously making distinctive thoughts between accommodations, destinations. But also in very high representation here, we see when thinking about what type of trip to take, when choosing a destination. And these decisions can mean huge differences in types of revenue generated. You know, a beach trip to Florida versus a trip to can mean very different revenue implications from a hotelier's perspective. So now we're looking at types of video. When it comes to the types of videos that resonate, we see that both business and leisure travelers are interested in both professional and community type generated content as well as user generated content. We do get the question, if I have to pick, should I do professional content? Should I do user generated content? And we really recommend a diversified strategy because as we see here, lots of different types of videos resonate very well among all types of travelers. As you're looking through, I'll just call out, we do see a particular interest in videos from people like me. And again, that's sort of connecting back a theme where we see it almost seems to them like a more personal recommendation.
And they all, as you point out, Katie, they have different purposes, right? UGC or user-generated videos are often perceived as more authentic, more casual, and so I think your point is well taken. It's something for everyone.
Yes, excellent way to round about the slide. Couldn't have said it better. And finally, when we look at the types of sites used to view online videos by hotel bookers specifically, we see them dabble in several sources, but the overwhelmingly most relied on source is YouTube. We see 80% of hotel bookers use YouTube to watch online video. And with that, I will conclude both the online video section and my comments in regards to how our marketing findings and traveler behavior and preferences can guide marketers in the hotel space to a really digitally comprehensive marketing strategy.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Katie. Judging by all the questions that have been coming from our audience, lots and lots of interest, and thank you for sharing those insights. We have a little bit to go. We also left a couple of minutes at the end to tee up some more questions from people that have come in, but let me just wrap up some of the key takeaways. Certainly there's a lot of information that Katie shared with us today, but people are inspired primarily by online resources, most especially through social and video sites and search results. So it's really important that your hotel be represented on the sites and optimized for the search engines. And we also heard that the research phase is a really critical part of the planning stage of hotel shopping, which presents this opportunity for hotel marketers to grab the attention of the consumer and then stay memorable as they go through the consideration process all the way to booking. We also know, no surprise, mobile is really important throughout the entire shopping journey, with 75% of leisure travelers switching between devices to complete planning and booking, and being optimized for phones and tablets shouldn't be a back burner initiative any longer. We really need to get those initiatives up to the top of the to-do list. And lastly, 80% of hotel bookers watch online videos to make a decision regarding their accommodations. And just a note, you know, video production isn't as expensive as it used to be, and we know that there really is an option for every budget out there, so it's really something that should be considered. I'm going to launch one more poll because what I'd like to hear from everybody is, what surprised you most about what you learned today? The first answer is most travelers are undecided when they begin planning. That one surprised me, I know. Online travel videos are very influential in the early stage. Brand sites ranked 9 in the places leisure travelers shop. I was also surprised by that. And then 3 in 4 hotel bookers switch between devices. So I'm going to give everybody a minute or two to weigh in. And right now it looks like the brand site answer is leading, followed closely by online travel videos are very influential in the early stages. So, and then lastly, the fact that hotel leisure bookers switch between devices. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to close the poll, and we will continue on for the next few minutes of the webinar. Just to wrap up a little bit about Leonardo's visual storytelling platform, we call it vBrochure, and we offer this solution to hotel marketers to help you achieve some of your business objectives, which include reaching and engaging consumers while they're shopping with an end-to-end multimedia solution, and we heard how important that is. So videos, virtual tours, and photos are all part of this visual storytelling platform. And then we also help you communicate the value that you provide so that you don't just sell on price. And then lastly, an opportunity to set yourself apart from the competition so that as the shopper goes through their journey, they're going to choose you with the certainty that it is the right choice for them. So a couple of notes. We have another webinar next month. It will be focused on what to expect in 2015. And many of you have asked. We are going to share a recording of this webinar along with the presentation on SlideShare, and we'll be sending you an email to those links in the next few days, as well as, and Katie, I think you can speak to this, you'll be posting the 2014 Google Traveler study on Google Travel in the next couple of weeks. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Hopefully in the next 3 weeks or so, we're hoping to get on Think with Google, so our Think Insights page, the official presentation from all of the data.
Great. Thanks very much to our audience. You guys were wonderfully interactive. We thank you for that. Great questions. We're going to get them all answered in a follow-up email. And just one question before we leave, Katie. A couple of people have asked this. The data that you shared today, was that worldwide data or was it U.S.?
I should have clarified this in the beginning. Frequent question. The data was entirely U.S.-based and can only speak to trends that we see here in the States.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, again, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciated your attendance. Thank you, Katie Galambos from Google Travel. Again, great insights. Thank you for taking the time. This is Thursday, which is the new Friday, so I hope everyone has a good weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.